Okay, it sounds good.
So yes,
Um,
so recording started. So Emmanuel, I think time is yours. Yeah.
okay. So you can turn off your camera now. I think it's okay. I've seen all of you. Thank you. My name is Emmanuel. I'll turn off my video now, just so we can have a smooth conversation. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Silence means okay. Um, so as Jean said, I'm a 2017 10 Academy Fellow. Um, I am a machine learning engineer as well. I started my career as a software engineer, and then I moved to machine learning. Um, and then currently I'm a postgraduate researcher at in South Africa and University of Cape Town. Um, that's a brief. I'm from Ghana. I'm a Ghanaian. Um, yeah, that's a brief introduction about my background. Today, I would be walking you guys through um, deployment stuff. We will start by taking a basic intro to um, web development, and then we will do some Flask, and hopefully, if we have time, we'll walk through the deployment uh, of a very basic web application written in Flask. Now, um, for this week's challenge, which is the pharmaceutical sales prediction challenge, your task at the end of it is to build a very basic predictive web application that you can save to your managers, right? Um, at the base of every machine learning project, or at least to make any machine learning project useful for a company, you have to move your code out of Jupyter notebooks to a proper code structure. And then at the end of doing that, you have to move it to a web server and possibly create some APIs to interact with that. Now, in the course of teaching and going through this whole process with you, if you don't understand anything that I say, please just send a message on the page to, please just send a message directly over here. And I think Jean would pick your messages and stop me at regular intervals to answer them for you. Okay. So to begin with, let's think about what um, um, the web does, the basic components that make up a web application. So for a typical web application, you have what you call the front end and then the back end. The front end is typically what you see. So if you go on Facebook, the text that people write on the front end as your feed. If you go on Instagram, the pictures that people post, your timeline, um, the basic Facebook logo, and things like that. Those are the components that form the front end. Then at the back of that is what we call the back end. The back end consists of things like databases, um, um, a web server itself, and other components which either store assets that are saved, which store data that is saved to the front end, or it's what it simply does is it helps make the front end functional. Okay, I just saw a question. Jean,
I'm here. Yes.
Okay, so someone just asked me if we would have a hands-on coding session. Yes, I'm just giving a basic intro, and then the rest of the entire session would be a coding session.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so typically when so that's a basic web application architecture. Then someone would ask, how has this, I mean, what has this got to do with our machine learning project this week? Now, at the end of building your model and testing if it's predictive enough, the next thing you do is to serialize the model, which is you store the model such that each time you want to predict on a new data set, you don't have to go through the whole process of building the model again. You just import your serialized model, and then you run the predict model in sklearn on it, and then generate some predictions which you can now save in the web application, right? So I'm going to assume that you already have familiarity with HTML and CSS, which are the presentation and the cascading, I mean the presentation part of the front end. And then I'll focus on the back end, which is Flask. Now, for those of you who have no experience with HTML at all, I would suggest this tutorial over here, which I'm going to share with you in a moment, right here. You can go through it. It's going to take you about maybe an hour or 30 minutes just to familiarize yourself with what HTML is. And as I start coding over here as well, I'll just teach you the very basic components that you would need for your project. So that is it about the talking part of my presentation. And then we are just going to move straight on to coding. Does anyone have any question as at now so far with what I've done?
Good afternoon.
Any question, guys?
Yeah, good afternoon.
Yes. Good
Good afternoon.
Okay, so like I want to ask, are we actually displaying the whole project in HTML and CSS? Because I already saying something about a prediction table alone, so I was not too sure about that. Is it just the table we are displaying on like on the website, like on HTML and CSS, like on a web page, or we are displaying the whole of all our everything we are doing? I think I need a clarification on that.
Okay, so the idea behind the challenge was to not tell you exactly what to do. It's to make room for you to be creative around the way you want to save your predictions, right? The basic way of saving, someone's background is noisy. The basic way of saving the prediction is to display it in a table. That's the simplest way possible. So if you choose to go by that simple way, that's it. You can just save it in an HTML table. Olasho, I hope I've answered your question, but feel free to be.
Yes. Yes, sir. Thank you. You've answered it, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Someone asked me, my question is that CSS suffice for a dashboard. Won't we be using something like a JS library? Okay. You can use JavaScript to build a library, but you remember you have only 2 days. I think a very basic HTML website with HTML tables, well labeled and clean enough for any executive to see would be just about it. You don't need to build entire dashboards using JS. But if you think you have enough time to be able to do that, then more grace to your elbow. Okay. in the absence of any question, we can just go right ahead and start with the coding session. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, is there any more questions?
Yes. So like Patrick was asking the question because this week is like more related to visualization. So the core things are what we are expecting this week is visualization. So in the challenge, there are some part about data visualization and like exploration part, and then machine learning, and then the deployment of the machine learning. So some plots and some tables, and for example, for like the prediction output should be like visualized and analyzed through a dashboard. So that's why they are like worrying about those things. But I know that some of them already share some good resources, some GitHub. I don't know if there are something related, and I think I discussed that with Yabi, if they can use that as template and then go on, and yes, they have the feedback. So I think as much as possible, if you can manage to produce something better, yes, it's okay. But the core things is that we want just to see that yes, you have handings those things, and you are well introduced, so that later you can just improve yourself. So this is a starting point. So if you can manage to do whatever you can manage to do, is okay. So Flask is a possibility. So we also have Tableau for visualization. We also have Power BI. So I think this week is not about Power BI and Tableau. We are gonna use Tableau definitively next week and the following week. But this time you can just like focus on the things you share, the resources you share as templates for dashboard, or the things Emmanuel is talking about. Also, I think there is a second talk Ben will give tomorrow about the deployment things, so that you will get more the idea, I think.
Okay, thank you, Jean.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll share my screen with you now so we can start writing some code. Oh, interesting. Jean, do I have the option to share screen? Because I can't see it. Okay, present now.
Yes, present.
So can you see my screen?
Yes,
Yes,
we
we
can
can.
see your screen. Yeah.
You can see the terminal.
Yes,
Yes,
we
we
can.
can see. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay, nice. Okay, so we are going to be building a very simple, a very basic Flask application. I don't know. Yes.
Hello. Please, my
Hi.
question is, which of the IDs are we going to be using?
Yeah, you can feel free to use any ID. I'll be using PyCharm for my work today, but you can feel free to use VS Code. You can feel free to use Sublime Text. You can feel free to use PyCharm as well. The choice is yours. Okay. So at the core of it, I would start every web application by creating a simple directory where we are going to store all the files. Up until now, you've been doing most of your work in Jupyter Notebooks, but in actual fact, in the real world, when you want to deploy stuff, you have to move it into Python scripts. So we're going to try to make our code as modular as possible in doing this in a very basic way, so that you can just get a hang of how things are done.
Yeah. So Emmanuel, will you share the code with them? I think with me, and then I will share with them in today folder, so that they can have access.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah, sure. At the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can just create a directory. A directory is just a simple folder, and then we can just name that like Tenacard, right? That's where we are going to store everything. So if you do a very basic, how familiar are they with command commands?
They are good.
Yeah?
They are good. They are well familiar. They are familiar with those things. We
Okay.
already
Okay.
noticed.
Nice. So I'm just going to start work in the IDE, and feel free to stop me anytime I'm doing something and you don't understand. I'll explain it. And you have to stop me as much as possible, because there's a problem when you've done something for so long and you are trying to teach it out to people. The problem is that you really don't know how fast you are moving, or you really don't know if you are going at a good pace because of your familiarity with the issue. So please feel free to stop me if I've skipped something. Okay, PyCharm doesn't want to work anymore. Sorry about that. Let me just quit this. So I'm trying to open my new command. Okay, so this is the folder we just created, right? At the base of every Flask app, or in fact, at the beginning of every Python project, what you would want to do would be to create a virtual environment for what it is that you are doing. So in my case over here, I would want to create a virtual environment for this Flask project, and there are quite a number of ways to create a virtual environment. You can use either the Python virtual environment, or you can use pipenv. Personally, my go-to preference is pipenv because it's simple and straightforward. Now, why do we need to create a virtual environment? We need to create a virtual environment because you want to avoid the clashing of different versions of Python when you're coding. On my system, for example, I have both Python 2 and Python 3. If you don't do, if you don't wrap your code in a virtual environment and you run it, and let's say you've updated your Python 2 to Python 3, you're going to have clashes. So in order to actually avoid all these issues, you just want to wrap everything. Yeah, ja?
Are you using the professional, the community PyCharm?
No, I'm using the professional.
Okay, sure. So, but the community is also enough for this task, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Because okay, sure.
Okay, so to create a virtual environment, it's as simple as just issuing the command pipenv and shell. It will go ahead and create the virtual environment. Just conceptualize the virtual environment as a container which wraps both your code and your programming environment, right? Okay, so we've created this. You won't see anything after creating the virtual environment because you haven't created any files, right? But the first thing you can do after creating this virtual environment, what you see is this pip file is going to be created over here. Now, the next thing we want to do is to install Flask. Flask is a Python micro framework for creating web application, right? It means it's on the PyPy, it's in the PyPy repository. The usual thing you do when you are installing Python packages is to do a pip install. But since we are in this virtual environment, and this virtual environment was created using pipenv, you can do pipenv install, and then you install Flask, and it will go right ahead and install Flask. Up until this point, we still haven't started writing code for anything yet. So we can just go ahead and create the very first thing that you would usually see in most Flask applications, which is create a basic server, right? So to create a server, we can just create a simple file called server.py. And if you see here, you can see I've created it over here. I created it using the touch command. Now, this server is going to act as exactly what it says, which is a server for our web application. The very basic thing that you would want a server to do is to listen to incoming requests from the web. Now, A request is just a simple command that you issue to a server saying that, oh, I want this resource, can you give it to me? And then it gives it to you. A typical case is when you go into your browser and type www.google.com, right? That is a request that you're making to Google servers. So what we want to do in this file is to create some code that listens to things like that, so that when someone goes to your platform, www.roseman.com or www. whatever URL you have, it will give the person some information that the person requested for. Okay, so to do this, we need to import certain things from the Flask library. Remember, we just installed Flask a moment ago. The Flask library comes with a whole lot of powerful tools that I'm sure with time you would get familiar with. Okay. Sorry about this. I'm just gonna. Okay, it's fine. Okay, so we can import the very first thing we can import is the Flask class, and that we would use for our API routing, right? Routes are simply the URLs, the things you do, like www.stackoverflow/ maybe Python, www.10academy/fellows, or things like that, right? So let's do the very first thing. From Flask, imports Flask, and let's create an object using what we just imported. Okay. As I said, the reason we imported this Flask module over here is to use it as an API router. Now, to create a simple API, or I mean, to create a simple route, what you can do is to use a decorator. So to create a simple route, you can just do app.route, and then let's say we want a route to our homepage. So, and then we can call the request methods. Now, at this point, if you haven't done any kind of web development, I'm sure you will be confused. So let's just take a moment to digest what is happening over here. This app.route, what it is saying is, if the user goes to the home page, right? Let's do something simple over here. Like this slash over here means the very first thing that you see, which is the home page, right? If you go to HTML or CSS, you can see more things have been added. We'll get there soon. But the very first thing, that slash, this is it, this one. It's representing this thing over here. So everything before it. If you do slash CSS, it means CSS slash everything before it. So that's the basic thing we are telling you to do over here. Now, you can see we have methods get. There are several, not several, but there are a couple. There are 4 main ones that we usually use when we are doing requests. And this is because there are different types of requests, right? One thing that you can do, which you usually do, is you just go to websites and type www.whatever.com, and then the website is displayed to you. But if you go to websites like Facebook or any web application, you realize that you also type in your details in a box or in a text field, and then that is taken to the database, right? We want to have secured ways of either getting, which is a usual thing, which everyone can do, which is www.google.com, and you getting your specific information when you go on a site and log in. So because of that, we need different methods that we can use to request for info from the server. This get one is what we use generally for requesting any kind of resource that is available to the public. Then there is another one called post, which you use for, usually you use it to send sensitive files to the database. Then we have put, and I think the last one we have put, and then I think the put is usually used for updating. Let's say you want to reset your password, or you want to update your username and things like that. And then there's another one called, I think, delete, which you usually use to delete stuff. Let's say you want to delete your Tinder profile, for example. Okay, so let's see what we are going to do next. The next thing is we can create just a simple function which we use to request for data from home, right? The home means your home page over here. You can name it anything you want. Just be consistent when you are doing the naming. So with this, we want to display this if we go to the home page. Let me see. So we've successfully created our first route and what we want to display when someone goes to the home page. Now, I'm sure you all know this command where we tell Python that if this file is run directly, then you should run certain things in this file. Don't run everything. These are the things that we want you to run if this file is run directly. So if this file is run directly, like we are going to do in a moment, we want you to run exactly this command. So the host is the name of the server, like what you want to be typed into the browser, right? You can name it 127, you can name it localhost. It's just something that I'll use to identify this particular web app. And then port, the port also you can use, you can name it any port you want. Usually you would want to avoid ports that are between 0 and 1028 because those are usually assigned to the system. We call them system ports. And then debug is equal to true is set because we want to be able to see if there are errors. We want to be able to see the full details. You don't leave this on when you are deploying because you don't want to expose your web application to attackers. As a simple test, we can just run this server file just to see if we are on the path. Okay, everything seems to run well. If you go to this URL, they said it's running on this, right? If you go to this URL, you can see that this homepage is being displayed over here. This is the exact same thing that we put over here, but it's not being displayed. Okay, so
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Okay, about the host, use 0.0.0.0.0.0.
Yeah.
Can we put names there? Is it just limited to numbers?
So that is a local IP address. Let's try it. I don't know. Let's try it. I don't think any arbitrary name would work, but if you use localhost, that should work. But I don't think any random name would work. Okay, so localhost also works, but let's see if we use Emmanuel. Let's see if it will work. I doubt. Okay, so yeah, Emmanuel is not identified as that. So you have to use either localhost or you use a group of 4 numbers separated by a dot.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
And sir, please, can you zoom your screen, please, sir?
Oh, sorry. I feel weird about zooming because I like to see my screen. I like to see my text very, very tiny. Oh, zoom. View. Guys, for some reason I can't zoom. Is the zooming a problem for everybody?
Yes, for those that are using phone.
Okay, I'm coming. Hold on, let me just check. Control Alt plus S. Oh goodness. Control Alt plus S. It's for some reason my Zoom is not working. Let me see. Oh goodness. Sorry. For some reason my screen is not working. But don't worry, you will see the code at the end of Jean will share the code with you so you can see it.
Yes. I will share.
So we can manage this.
Yes, we can manage, and then at the end, as will just give me access to the code, I will share with them. No problem.
Okay. Let me just see. It doesn't look like it wants to get better. I'm sorry. Okay, so as you can see, we just displayed this over here, right? Where is it? This is what we displayed. If of course, if you change this to first page, you see it's changed over here as well. So we've just created a very basic structure of a web app, or a very basic web app for that matter. We can choose to add another screen. Let's say we want to just create an about. So we just create a route first, which is app.route. Do an about. The method again is going to be a get. And then we can do the def about and return, let's say, h1 about page, right? If you save this, sorry, if you save this and we run this again, and we go here, we don't see any about, but remember, we did a /about over here, if you can see. So we have to add it to the URL, and then we see it as changed to about. So that's how the various pages in web apps are created. That's how the routing is done. If you want a new name, you have to add it and add the files over there. But if you've seen any reasonable web application, or even slightly reasonable web application, you realize that what we are doing here is very unscalable. For example, look at this. This website alone has CSS languages, all this text, and all this and all these things. We cannot just copy all those things and put into this file. This file will become excruciatingly long, and this would make our code clumsy. So what do we do about it? We have to store these files in an HTML file and just return it over here. Now, what do I mean? To do this, we just basically create basic HTML files that contains this kind of info, and then we can share it here. So as an example, and in the vein of writing clean code, we create a folder called templates, right? And this folder is going to appear over here. Now, inside this templates folder, we can just create something like a file called home.
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
sorry for cutting you short. That means
It's okay.
this virtual environment that we open now, it won't be
Yeah.
saved in your computer, right? Like it won't be on your computer, right? To just be on this PyCharm environment.
Oh, it is on the computer.
Yeah.
It is on the computer.
But I think the virtual environment you opened, I think it will not really be on your system, right? It will be inside this PyCharm environment, right?
You mean Tenacad?
No, the virtual environment that you created earlier. Just trying to get it.
Yeah, this is it. This Tenacad virtual environment. I can open it from here as well. You can open it from anywhere on your computer. It wouldn't, okay, so let's reason through it. This terminal over here, right, that I'm typing from, is not a terminal that is embedded in PyCharm. PyCharm only references the actual terminal's terminal. I mean, the actual computer's terminal. So everything that I'm doing over here is actually happening over here. So even outside PyCharm, you can still access this virtual environment. Have I answered your question?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. We can run a basic experiment after where we try to get a virtual environment over here and see if it works or not. So just remind me at the end so that we can try it. Yeah? Okay.
Okay.
So we've created our home.html file. Jean, have they done anything related to HTML at all?
Not really related to HTML, but I think the resources you share with like the W3 schools will actually help them. Yeah.
Okay, so we are going to use this as an opportunity to just do a very basic intro to HTML. HTML is very simple. You can possibly learn it in like an hour. What would take a lifetime to learn is CSS. It's tricky and it takes time to really master. But I mean, it's also something that you can start working with directly just after learning HTML. Okay, so let's look at HTML. When you think about HTML, just think about PowerPoint for the web. So HTML is the presentational view of the web. It's the code that we use to lay out text, images, and things like that that we want to see on a web page. So how do you go about creating that? You go about creating that by creating a file with an extension .html. Just like how if you want to create a Python file, you create a server.py file. The same thing applies for HTML, and the same thing applies for any programming language, or the same thing applies for, in fact, any software. So if you create a Word file, it's .docs. If you create a PowerPoint file, it's .ppt. Same for Excel, XLS, and things like that. So the first thing you do when you're creating an HTML file is to lay out the structure, and this is the basic structure. You can do the .html, right? And then inside the HTML, you can do a head. Inside the head, you can do a title. And then beneath the head, we can have the body. Now, everything we want to type goes into the body. This is the basic HTML structure. I mean, you can go ahead and define the doc type right at the top, but it's not really necessary in our case. So I'll just go ahead and just leave it like this. But if you are creating just basic HTML structure for front-end assets, you should always add the doc type. This is what I mean by the doc type. Doc type, HTML. That's what I mean by the doc type. You should always specify it. Let me see if I'm right. Okay. Sorry, I'm just checking. Yeah, that's right. So what is title? Title is what you see over here: localhost, editor, localhost, product, CSS, deployment, blah, 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 blah. So we are going to put homepage over here for ours. Can you guys see what I just indicated as what the title is?
Yes.
Thank you. So what goes into our body? We can just create our first tag, which you've already seen over here. This is just an HTML tag. So we can just indicate this is an H1. You would see the difference between the various tags very soon. H2, this is an H2. And then let's do an H6. This is an H6. And then we can save this. And down somewhere, we can just do something for the paragraph tag. Now, someone would say, oh, Emmanuel, how do you know these tags exist? Well, you can see them in the W3 link that I shared with you. If you go to the W3 link and click on it, you'll just see all the tags listed over there, what they do, and you're going to see what all these tags do in a moment. Okay, so we've just created our basic thing. Let's just make sure that we indicate that this is the home page. I just want to make this bold so I can distinguish it. This is the home page, right? Okay, now we are done with this. How do we save this file? How do we save this now in our structure? Remember, what we did is we are trying to write a longer version over here, right? So we have to find a way to save this home.html file over there. Okay, now there is a method in Flask called render template. I hope I got the spelling right. And you can use render template to render the template over here. Flask automatically know that whatever you've created is in the templates folder. It automatically knows. So all you need to do is to specify the name of the file, which is home.html. We can now come back and run our web server and see what happens. So you see, everything that we have in here, which is, let's start with the home page. This home page, this is it over here, home page. You can't see it fully because I have all these tabs opened. Let me see, hopefully I don't close anything. Yeah, can you see it? Someone should just let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
you can
so
see it.
Yes.
this title that we wrote over here as homepage, okay, this is it over here. Then everything else, H1, this one is bold, and then we can see this is H1, this is H2, this is H6. So you can see as we go down the H1, it's just like heading, subheading, and things that you have in Microsoft Doc. And then the paragraph is just like what it is, a paragraph. We can choose to add this over here. I don't know if it would update. Yeah, it has updated. So we can even copy a whole lorem ipsum and just post it over there as reference text, and the whole thing would display over there as well. So this is how you lay out your presentation view on your front end. Just trying to order this a bit. Sorry. Okay. So if you come here, you can see our whole text is displayed over here. Now, you can do the same for the about page over here. You create another file, you reference it over here, you put whatever you want to put over there as well. This is how simple it is to create a web application. But let's see something. In creating your Flask app, in creating your predictions, you are first of all going to store the model as a file, and you're going to import it in this file. And then you're going to save some predictions to the model, right? Or maybe on the front end here, you're going to create something like a form that when someone types in some details, where the details would be the various features that you have in your table, a prediction will be generated. How do you typically store things like that? Like, how do you save that to the home page? Well, it's very simple. If you have this render method over here, let's say we want to change our about page. We want to add a title to our about page, right? We can just add a simple variable here and call it, let's say, title. And okay, let's change it here. Let's rather add it here. I don't want to create. So we can just do title and then call it home page, or let's say home, just to distinguish it. And inside this render method, you can just do a simple title and call it this title. Just assign it as a title. And this would automatically be available to the HTML over here. Now, how do we use it over here? To use it over here, you just wipe this off and put two curly brackets and reference the name over there, title. This name, title. It used to be home page, now it's going to be home. If you see it's home page, if you refresh the page, it has now become home. So it's detecting it. So you can set your predictions to this whole home page via that method. Just store it in some context variable and pass it down to the HTML, and then you can display it. It's as simple as that. That is basically almost the entire introduction to Flask. But there's one more thing which we have to do, which is the static files, right? Let's just see if we, how many minutes do I have? I have 9 minutes. Okay, I think we are still well within time. We can create static files. Static files are the CSS files. Yeah? Hello? Okay. Someone?
Yes, we are with you.
Okay. Static files are the CSS files, right? The CSS files are what gives colors and font size and things like that to the various presentations. So we can just do something very basic where we create a static file. Now, in the vein of good file structure, we have to create a folder called static. You can decide not to create a folder called static, right? You can decide that all you want to do is to just put the static file over here as well, but I don't encourage that. In fact, I discourage it. And inside this static file, we can just create our base CSS. So touch static, and then we do base.css, and it's going to appear over here. Now, just as a basic demo, I simply want to change all my H1 tags. I want to make their color red. So to do that, I'll just type H1 over there, bring the curly brackets, and then this is indicated as color. I'll change it to red. Please never do what I did over here. In fact, let me just correct it before someone red in hex code. You always want to specify your colors in hex code instead of typing red. This red that we've done over here would work fine. Let me just show you. Okay, But first of all, if we want to make sure that our template is able to detect the CSS that we've created over here, we need to find a way to specify it in this HTML file. And to specify it, we simply use this tag called the link, and then what it is referencing, which is a style sheet. And then the next thing would be where this style sheet is located, which is href, hyperlink reference. And that is in our static and then slash base.css. So static slash base.css way. Then we can run the server again and see what happens. If we run the server and we go here, you can see the H1 tags have changed, right? It's red, all right. But we don't do this. We don't indicate it just as red, even though it will work. We use the hex code because you want to avoid different browsers' interpretation of red. If you write red, different browsers interpret red as, it could be a little shade of red. There will be a little variation in the red for different browsers. But if you indicate it in the hex code is the specific thing of the right color channels that you want exhibited exactly in your browser. So always use this. If you want to see if the H6 or let's say the paragraph tag will also work, you can just change the color of the paragraph tag. You can use blue. Again, please don't type blue. Always go to Google, write blue in hex code. It will be displayed for you and just copy it. This is blue in hex code. Again, if we come here and refresh the page, let me just close this. If you come here and refresh the page, oh, interesting. I think I need to restart the server to see the changes. For some reason, let me see. Oh, I don't know why it's not working. Interesting. It's supposed to work. I don't know. Let me just use an H2 to see if the H2 will be better. Huh. Interesting. Okay, I don't know what's happening here. Okay, yeah, but that's the idea. I'll try to check this before I push to GitHub for you. Just comment this out. Let me just take it out. So that's how you reference the CSS files in the HTML file, right? At this point, we have a very basic web application and we are ready to deploy. I need you to check something. Every file that we have is in this folder called 10 Academy, right? And if I reduce 10 Academy over here, there is nothing. I'm going to put the deployment files outside this, but it's going to be in the general folder of 10 Academy. So the very first thing we have to do is to install a server for deployment. Most Python web applications use either Apache, Nix, or Gunicon. Gunicon is Green Unicorn. I'm going to be using Gunicon for the deployment to Heroku. To do this, I first of all need to install Gunicon, pipenv install Gunicon. I hope I got the spelling right. Okay, good. Okay, then the first thing that we do over here is to create. Am I right with what I'm doing? Okay, the first thing we have to do here is to create our proc file. The proc file is just going to contain exactly what we want to be run on the server. So just like how we have terminals here and I'm executing commands, the server is essentially just a computer with a terminal. And just like how I run python.web .server.py and you see it running, we want that to be run perpetually on the server. And to do this, you create a file called a proc file. Okay, sorry. So we create a file called the proc file. And inside that proc file, we put our exact command that we want to see running on Heroku. And that command is basically web gunicon. Then we can do WSI, SGI, then we can do tenacard. Tenacard being this directory, right? So essentially what we are saying is go into this WSIG file and then run tenacademy. We will get to the WSIG file in a moment. Then after doing this, you create a runtime.txt file. The runtime.txt file contains the Python runtime that you want to use on Heroku. It's important to specify it just so that, just like how the virtual environment thing works, just so that you don't have a clash of runtimes when you want to execute code. So to do that, I'm going to use Python 3.7, 3.7.5. You can choose whichever environment you want, but make sure that whatever environment you choose here is the same environment that you're using to run your code on your local host so that you don't have any clashes. Then after doing that, you remember we created the SGI file over here, so we need to create it now and then specify the main things that we want. So I'm just going to quickly create the SGI.py file. This is called whiskey. Spelling being whiskey, like the whiskey that we drink, or the whiskey that those of us who drink whiskey drink. So from tenacard, dot server. Why is it indicating this? I don't know. It's import app. Okay. I don't know why that error is being indicated. Then we can do name is equal to main. And then app.run is all we need. This should work. So that's basically everything we need for our deployments. But I'm surprised at something. I don't know why it's giving me this errors. Okay, yeah. So this is the structure we need to do the Heroku deployment, right? But to actually deploy on Heroku, we need to go to Heroku and create an account. And not only create an account, but set up how do you call it? Set up a 10 Academy. sorry, set up our terminal to run the Heroku command line interface. I know at this point, anyone who hasn't done it before would just, so Heroku CLI. I'm not going to do this because we are all on different machines, so it makes no sense. But this is the process for setting it in your environment. So if you are in Mac OS, if you are in Windows, or if you are in Ubuntu, I'm going to share this with you. And then you can follow this tutorial to set it up. And then after setting it up, you basically have the structure. All you have to do is to just log into your terminal. So I don't even remember my Heroku login, but I can try. If you do Heroku login, it's going to bring you here to log in using your credentials. Hopefully my credentials work. Okay, yeah, so it works. So I've logged in, and then you can do a Heroku create, turn a card. Okay, so I have a problem because it starts with digit. So I can do Heroku create a card. A card is already taken. So yeah, you have to go through it. Maybe Academy 10 to find a suitable name, a name that works. Okay, good. And then after doing this, you can just do your you can push your code to this address. So get push Heroku master. Oh, okay. The first thing we should do is probably push our code to GitHub. So how familiar are you with source control, Jean? Do I need to teach source control? Whoa, it's 4.6.
Yes,
How familiar are they with source control? Have they done anything with source?
Yes, I think.
GitHub?
Yes, they are well introduced to GitHub source control. Yes, I think they can manage that also. Yeah.
Okay. Then we can just do a get init, and this will initialize a GitHub repository. You can go to your GitHub, create a new repository. Trial, I'll make, okay, let me just make this private, create a repository, copy this, bring it here, paste it, and then just do your push. Oh, sorry. You do git add and then git commit -m demo, and then git push is going to bring an error. So you just copy this, put it here, go. And we have our files over here. So the files are in GitHub now. Now let's see if by any chance we can push our files to Heroku. So git push, sorry, git push Heroku master. Okay. Oh, Yeah, I have to now set up this for Heroku. Yeah, but that's basically the idea. This is the last step. After pushing to GitHub, you set up your Git with Heroku, and then you just run the Git push Heroku master, and it's automatically deployed. They give you a link that you can go and then show your website to everybody. So yeah, that's the end of the session. Sorry if I was fast,
Right.
but you can ask me your questions now.
Yeah, I think this was a really nice session, and they agree with me. So if you have a question, just ask. If you also want, we can like continue on Slack. And,
Someone asked a question. Let me see if I can quickly answer.
okay.
Someone asked, and I wanted to see how Docker thing comes in. Okay, so
Yes, I think there is a tutorial also on Docker things tomorrow.
oh,
I
nice.
think, yes, tomorrow 12. I think I'm just setting that right now with Ben. So maybe you can just give your thought on that, and then we'll focus on that tomorrow, I think.
Okay, so one of the things in software engineering, one of the problems in software engineering is you write your code on Mac, you push it to GitHub, someone pulls the code, and the code doesn't run on their system. And then you're like, it was running on my system. Why is it not running on yours? So in order to prevent the operating system differences files, programmers came up with things like virtual, how do you call it? Virtual box, no, virtualization, where they put the code in an operating system like Ubuntu, and then they share the code with the operating system. So even if you're on Windows, you have to run the file in Ubuntu. Even if you're on Mac, you have to run the file in Ubuntu to prevent these differences, right? So it's in vain of that Docker was written. So what Docker does is to create a mini operating system around your files, such that you can share the mini operating system with everybody without having system problems. So that's how Docker comes in. So imagine Docker as a virtual environment at the level of the operating system.
Great. I think this hope this answer your question, prior Dave. And if there is any other question, feel free to ask. And if not, we can continue Slack. And tomorrow, you have the second talk about the Bayesian bandit and the deployment of the machine learning using Docker things and Flask. So I just set it up, and I think that's all. I want to thank Emmanuel for this great time. I think myself learned a lot from you, so thank you so much. And let's talk another time. Maybe yes, don't forget to share with me the files so that I can just patch them.
Okay.
Yes. So thanks everyone.
All right.
Stopping recording.